Hello, everybody. Bo Billington, another podcast with the free agent. Got the great pleasure of sitting here with Dave Thompson. Dave, thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the invite. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, so I'm happy to finally be a participant, not just a listener.
Nice, man. Well, I'm super pumped to have you on, especially because like what you do. You're spent 20 years selling SaaS solutions, two stints as a CRO, two exits in the last 5 years, which is insane. And now you're
Mhm.
actually a fractional CRO. And what's super interesting is like, we went through COVID and I think, quasi white collar recession. Now companies don't know how to hire, when to hire, or what even's going on. And so
Yeah,
what I've seen is companies doubling down on like the office of sales, so like the CRO as well as finance. And so I think it's super exciting to like what you're doing. And I'm very passionate about this fractional CRO and fractional work in general, man. So congrats to you for kind of like jumping out, ripping off the Band-Aid and hanging out a shingle.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been a wild and fun and really educational
Sure.
ride so far. I love talking to CEOs and founders, and
Yeah,
solving complex problems from the go-to-market, sales, marketing, rev ops, CS
100%.
side of the house. So it's been fun.
Nice. Well, how do you go from kind of like being, I don't want to say a company man, but obviously you worked 20 plus years for corporations,
Yeah.
and now you're independent, like you hung out your own shingle. How do you go from, I mean, why not just another CRO job?
Yeah, I mean it's been different for
Yeah.
sure. It's been quite and still adjusting. Like I haven't figured it all out. It's you know one of the biggest challenges. I was talking to someone recently about this who's in quasi the same boat as me, but you just get so used in customer to working these particular hours and being on call, and then now I find myself and it's taken a while to get to the point where maybe I can go work out in the middle of the day and then do some work from 9 to 11 o'clock at night, and still put in similar hours, but just
Yeah.
they're very, very different versus having obviously an entire team that needs me there, needs me available, should something arise, and obviously being on calls all day. So it's
Yeah.
that kind of shift in mentality has been I'm still, like I mentioned, still kind of adjusting
I,
to it.
yeah. So, I mean, I've been out for six
But
years.
I was about to say, you've been doing it for a while.
I still struggle though, honestly, with like,
Yeah.
I feel like we're pre-programmed where it's like 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or
Hmm.
whatever that time period is.
Hmm.
And I work out typically around like 9 o'clock in the morning, emails beforehand, catch up afterwards. But that's my time. But it's
Yeah.
still, I'll still find myself in the gym where I'm like stressing out, like, man, I gotta get in front of the computer. And it's like, dude, I'm still
Yeah.
putting the same amount of time.
Yeah.
It's just the way that I'm allocating the buckets is a little bit different. So it gets a little bit easier, but it's still just a weird shift when you don't have this, this structure in place that was the corporate
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah. No, I'm finding that as well. So it sounds like I've got some more time where it's going to linger for me based on your experience.
You gotta embrace it, Well, so
Yeah.
so how did you decide to kind of hang out your own shingle? I mean, did you see like a need in the marketplace where it's like, hey, companies can't afford a lot of times a chief revenue officer, they don't know when to bring somebody in. I've got the resident skill sets. I want to be in a situation where I'm working with different companies, different clients in a dynamic environment. Like, tell me a little bit, kind of like what was the catalyst for deciding to jump out and really kind of dig into this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head on a few of the items there. But from as I was an operator, I was also involved in working with CEOs, some obviously advisory roles that I have, and board roles, and but just talking and being introduced and networking with other CEOs and hearing their problems. That a lot of the same kind of issues came up, and you know most CEOs are challenged at some aspect of go to market, right? And
Yes.
so some of them are get to the point where a couple of things are usually going on. One is when I kind of thought that I'd come in and talk to someone and they wouldn't recognize that they need a CRO in place. But what I'm finding is a lot more often is that a lot of people are ready to embrace and get a CRO sooner than later, and frankly, before they're ready, and before the foundation is built to welcome a CRO in, because as I think you probably know, I think we might have talked about, but the average tenure of a CRO is 17 months, and for a first time CRO, it's 10 months, and so it's not only it's on both sides why that relationship sometimes falters and fails, and it's a big financial risk for a company, especially a startup company, to welcome a CRO on board. You've got an OTE of 500,000. You've got equity that you're probably giving out. You got recruiter fees that are probably in the six figures for someone like a CRO, and then they're going to bring some of their team, and they're going to hire, and so you're looking at in the course of 9 months, over $1 million that you're investing in the CRO and their team, and hoping it's the right investment, right? And then
100%.
if it's not, it's not only that the hard cost that you have from all of that, but it's also the opportunity cost of having to bring someone else in, or having to pivot, or losing good people, or things like that. So, one of the things I really focus on just helping CEOs try to build the foundation so they're in a good spot whenever that is, to welcome someone like a CRO on board, and so that is a solid relationship, and something that is much more likely to be successful versus saying, hey, our retention rate isn't good, let's bring a CRO to fix all this.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. In regards to the tenure, I think generally probably 10 months is because every company needs a fall guy at some point, right? You know what I mean? So that's probably why tenure is a little short on the first role.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you, and I have this conversation all the time with companies where they're like, hey, Bo, I need a CRO full time. And so we dig into their organization, dig into their company, and they don't even have the infrastructure to support a CRO. Whomever they're going to bring in is going to fail. You know what I mean? And like they're not ready financially as well. They can't afford one in a lot of situations. And so then they find themselves in this state of kind of like analysis paralysis, where they're not taking any action. So they're going to wait a period of a year, 2 years to hire this right CRO, when there's folks like you in the market tomorrow, you know what I mean, that could literally kind of help them move the ship, move the cursor, but then ultimately set the infrastructure and then work themselves out of a job, which to me is really like the entire point of a fractional worker, is to get in, maximize value, get out.
And I that's not every case either, because I've had conversations with various CEOs, and in terms of what they're looking for in the infrastructure, I'm like, you're actually ready. Like I think you should bring a CRO on board and really look at that. So it both sides of the fence on that one, for sure.
Let's kind of dig into that a little bit more then. Like, what are some of the signs to watch out for a company that it is time to bring in a full-time resource? And then conversely, what are some warning signs to look out for when it's like, hey, this is too early. You need a fractional.
Yeah, I think when CEOs notice there's an issue is when the lagging indicators start indicating that there are. So you're traditionally, most of your leads are coming in via inbound, and those start to dissipate. So now you need to think about how do we approach that from an outbound standpoint, or our retention is dropping and going down, or the win rates are we're not getting the same win rates as we have previously, or some of the easy stuff like sales, marketing, and CS and RevOps, if you're there, they're not meshing really well. So that's when the CEOs are like, that I talk to, are like, that there's something inherently wrong of what's going on. So we need to figure out how to fix the leak, essentially. But and then I'll come in and then I'll really want to understand, like, what are the leading indicators, and go through as much data as I can possibly get my hands on to figure out, what are some of those leading indicators that are causing these leaks and these lagging indicators to be an issue. So, a lot of times looking at the entire buyer journey and figuring out, where are the conversion rates, trying to get some historical information to understand where things are breaking, Looking at pricing and packaging, this is something that, so many companies just, they figure out pricing and packaging, and then, 5 years later, they've spent 30 minutes looking at it. And it's such a huge lever that you can pull. And so a lot of companies start with their, good, better, best, and, have a user-based pricing model. And maybe that's the best. So, a lot of my work is spent on really evaluating and looking at, how do you price it? How do you package? Looking at your ICP, like, what is the ICP to you? What is it? What should it be? Where should the focus be? How are you segmenting your target? How does the segmentation, correlate with the pricing that you have? And I just put an article out on LinkedIn today about discounting and how I feel that's one of the big killers of some companies as well. Because you get in the early stages of, win at all cost, right? You're founder led. You're just trying to get as many sales in. So, having a 40% discount to get a deal in so you can make payroll makes a lot of sense. But as you start growing, you need to get those things fixed, because you start, throwing out 40%, 30% discounts, and you're essentially just tossing a live hand grenade to the CS team. Sure. That, all the data points to, like, they're not going to expand. The retention of those is going to be much more challenging. There's a direct correlation in terms of the discount percent and the churn rate. Usually they're probably not, your perfect ICP either. There's a reason you're having a discount that much. So, looking through all of that, if there's, sales and CS and marketing misalignment, looking at comp plans. Like, are you comping the right behavior, or is marketing 100% comped on MQLs and sales is 100% comped on this, and CS is 100% comped on and everything's kind of a lagging indicator. They don't really mesh up. They don't create that alignment. And you don't have a comp plan that includes some of the leading indicators as well. Like, maybe CS can help with monthly active users that you've seen have shown to have a direct correlation in your retention rate, or marketing being a little bit more vested financially, monetarily in the outcomes of sales, and sales being a little bit more focused on something like a multi-year, or something with retention potentially, if they have an ability to influence that. So those are some of the things I look at when someone comes to me and, like, oh, here are the issues, which are, again, generally lagging indicators. I need to go a little bit deeper and kind of figure out what's going on.
No, it makes total sense. The compensation piece is such a hot topic always in regards to sales, because most companies end up, spiffing and compensating on the wrong things, which gets the wrong behavior. And so ensuring that that's aligned makes total sense. And then you brought up the marketing thing as well. And I've seen a lot of, writing out there about marketing and ensuring they've got skin in the game. And I feel like there's actually a movement that's more so focused on having, some sort of KPIs for marketing and performance-based incentives, which to me makes a tremendous amount of sense as well for an organization. But I mean, again, that's scratching the surface, and it's the office of the CRO is so broad. I mean, there's just so much stuff that you got to get in and work with, from customer success, as you mentioned, rev ops, interfacing with marketing, compensation. I mean, it's a big job.
Well, and then, when you're working at, a couple of the companies I work with that are, that were, earlier stages startups, to growth stage, I guess, but, getting involved with the negotiation of your vendors and, some legal stuff and things like that. So it's, I think I've had the luxury of having the opportunity to work in various roles, like as an SDR and as an account manager. So, most of the time, everyone under my kind of tutelage or underneath me, I've been in their shoes. I've been in that role at some point, so
which I think is
I can relate. Yeah. Which is important, but also as you grow, just having that opportunity early on to get involved with a small startup and getting involved with demand gen and legal and everything else was such a great experience for me, and I was able to learn so much from it. So sure. It was great.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits of companies hiring a fractional leader where maybe it's too early to bring in a full-time CRO or maybe even a VP of sales. And from my vantage, I mean, they're plentiful, but of course, cost is one component, expertise is another component. And then, also like having an objective advisor, somebody that's not ingrained in the politics, ingrained in the
Yeah.
culture. But any other benefits that companies can, acquire and accrue from hiring somebody such as yourself? Because essentially you're paying for expertise. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's where the money's going.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the benefits is, you hire a CRO full time, and at the beginning, the early phases, the CRO and the CEO are trying to figure each other out. So there's a little dance, and maybe there's not as direct, honest feedback coming from the CRO to the CEO because of that dynamic of that relationship. Whereas I can come in and I can be, frankly, a little bit more
Totally
direct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, direct. It's like, hey, it's always tough to, tell someone their baby's ugly, but if I can go in and point to the data and say, a lot of things I do, or I could go to someone's website and talk to them if they have the data on their conversion rates, and so many times I can make so many suggestions based on looking at someone's website, and I can say, I can tell you right now, I bet your conversion rate is less than 2%, which is kind of where you want to be. The industry standard B2B SaaS 2.5 is kind of where perfect. But based on maybe your page time is taking over 5 seconds to load, or maybe I'm looking at your form field for demos, and it's 9 things you're asking, and 4 drop downs, and the abandonment is probably through the roof. And there's no way for me to directly book an appointment with the sales rep. And there are all these things in pricing and packaging. How does that look? Is it confusing? Is it not? So those are things that right out of the gate, I can in initial discovery call, I can make those suggestions and be okay with it.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point, man. And I totally agree. And that's the beauty of consultants, because you're paying for expertise. You're paying for somebody to be brutally honest, and for them to tell you,
Yeah.
hey, newsflash, your baby is ugly. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about founder-led companies, where maybe they don't have sales infrastructure. Like, what are some warning signs they need to look out for, where maybe, they've taken the organization from a sales perspective as far as they can, and now it's time
Yeah.
to bring in a Dave, or maybe even a full-time resource.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a founder-led sales and it's and it's still kind of product market fit on the 0 to 1, frankly, I don't get involved too early. They don't need a CRO. They probably need. I know a ton of consultants out there. I'm friends with a lot of consultants that really focus on that 0 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
And even they tell me kind of like I'm telling you on when to bring in the CRO. They have the same suggestions and feedback is like, before you get a VP of sales in, like, make sure you have the infrastructure, or do you want to spend money on a VP of sales now, or does it make more sense to continue to sell, or bring in an another AE, or maybe an SDR and things like that. So a lot of my colleagues that focus, I guess, on the more to 0 to 1 and pre-product market fit, there's an absolute need for them as well to come in to help get the foundation set from a go-to-market standpoint, when you're pre-product market fit, to at some point welcome that VP of sales in. But I always say they should continue to flex that muscle as a founder, especially in sales, as long as they can, because obviously a founder with sales and marketing background is great. They have some sort of understanding of go-to-market. When you're kind of a product person coming in, like, I think it's really important to continue flexing that muscle as much as possible, as much as you can, because hopefully as you continue to grow, I always think that CEOs that have an understanding of go-to-market as they expand are those that are best suited to make really smart strategic decisions about the company's future in the long run.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, ultimately, I think a CEO's job is really to sell, and they need to kind of put themselves in a position to do that as well. And to your point too, I mean, a lot of times, money can be better spent hiring another account executive, But what I've seen too from a warning sign perspective is that you start getting a lot of turnover with the account executives, and then the greater engine is broken. Something's amiss. And in
Yeah,
this situation, I typically tell folks that, hey, you probably do need to bring in a fractional sales leader to fix the leakage because something is going on within the organization. And then upon kind of them rolling off, bring on another account executive and kind of build the machine from that point forward.
exactly. And it's good to have a baseline on some of the metrics as well that they might not know. Like hey, I have a 7% close rate. Is that good? Is it bad? Or
Right.
like what are some of the tweaks that we need to do to increase that, or even from a cultural standpoint. Like I'm a big believer in culture, and like even the best laid go to market strategies and plans. You're not going to get the same momentum and growth from those if placed in a culture that's not aligned and not together, and isn't focused on you know transparency and recognition and trust and things like that I'm pretty adamant about.
It's interesting that you bring up culture because you don't hear culture tied a lot within the sales silo. At least I don't. It's kind of like culture comes from the CEO or HR, whatever. But I totally agree with you. I mean, if you've got a poor culture, especially in the sales organization, I mean, your folks are not going to be successful. They're not going to want to sell, and they're going to leave the second that a better opportunity comes to the door. I mean, at some point, it's not all about money. Especially, I think, because of COVID. Maybe the best thing about COVID is that we all realize that like there is more to life than money, and enjoying what you
Yeah.
do today is actually important. And I hadn't really thought personally about the sales leader fulfilling that piece of the puzzle from a culture perspective. But based upon what you shared, I mean, it's paramount, and especially with on the sales silo. I mean, you can really morale can get low really easily, and it's your job to kind of help pick these folks up, get them motivated, get them selling, and get the machine humming.
Yeah, I mean, I think the CEO is, extremely important in terms of setting the foundation for a culture and everything else. But it really is up to, everyone underneath that individual
Yeah.
to help make sure that that the culture is ingrained in
Mhm.
everyone else from a tactical standpoint. And I've seen a lot of companies where there's just a huge disarray uh,
Right.
and a kind of a mess between sales and marketing and CS. And with that, they're really struggling on execution and seeing the results that they want. And so there's some tweaks that you can be made. Obviously, I don't think a consultant is going to come in and completely fix your culture, but I think there's suggestions and at least opening certain CEOs' eyes to some of the challenges that might be there from a cultural perspective.
That's great. No, totally agreed. All right, man. Last question. So, if you were to go on an engagement with an organization, and you kind of, alluded to this earlier in our conversation, but what would those like maybe 4 to 5 different areas be the first place that you would look, when you're evaluating a business and acting as, fractional chief revenue officer?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously I want to get the high level metrics down and understand that before diving in. So your ARR, your ACV, like retention rates, which includes gross and your expansion revenue. What's going
Mhm.
on there? What are your win rates? And then understand the conversion rates from the funnel in each stage in that buyer journey, and really understand how they think about TAM and SAM and their ICP and segmentation is really important
Mhm.
as well. So those are some of the high level data points I look to out of the gate, and then it's really going in and diving deep into as many data points and metrics as I can receive from them. So it's good to have all those data points, but the more you have historically, the more you can see how things are trending. What are those areas that are going in the right direction? What are those things going in the wrong direction? And then obviously, as mentioned before, we were talking about things like discounting and pricing and packaging and some of the conversion rates on your website and things like that. Really like to see like where people are buying, what if they have a good, better, best model, what are they buying? Why? What is the retention rate of that, of the different segments, and really splicing that data and getting that. So that's probably more than 5, but
Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, it's kind of like a holistic view of the organization from a sales perspective. And data is so important. You know, I've been in business 6 years, and I found like being able to just overlay the last few years has provided like just so much good data for what we're doing well, and where we're falling short. And one point that I want to bring up as well is you mentioned data. And you know, one thing that I always tell companies as well as consultants that the consultant's only as good as the data and the transparency that they receive. You know what I mean? And so if companies are not in a
Yeah.
position where they're really able to provide you the information in which you need, you're only going to be that successful, and the consulting engagement is not gonna be a home run.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's a great point. And at the end of the day, like as much information as I really want, like the vast majority of companies don't have that. So it's really going in and working with marketing to really understand like what metrics do they have that I can use, and you know how far back can they go
Right.
to get this information
And I'm
but
sure
yeah,
create some new KPIs yourself with the
that's
help
right.
of marketing and the executive team. Well,
Yeah,
awesome,
for
man.
sure.
Really appreciate your time, Dave. I promise to be quick. So prior to closing, you know, where can people find you?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so you can find me there, or you know send me an email, David at atlasrevenue group.com. I've also got a website, atlasrevenuegroup.com as well. So,
Awesome.
but
And then what type of
probably the
company?
best way is to find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. And then what kind of companies are you trying to work with? Just B2B SaaS, pre-market fit,
Yeah, yeah,
revenue, like
yeah.
what's your
B2B, SaaS, kind of in the growth mode. So as we were talking about before, you know, post kind of product market fit
got it.
is where I you know see the most value.
Cool. Awesome, man. Thanks so much for your time, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, bro.